The Padres make some last-minute moves as it looks like they're preparing for a playoff push. Welcome in. I'm Kainani Stevens, Javi from Locked On Padres. You've had yourself a day, probably a couple days at this point. When we look at some of the latest moves in terms of the Padres getting Scott Barlow, Garrett Cooper, Sean Reynolds, they sent Ryan Weathers out as well. I know you talked earlier about some of their other moves. What were your thoughts to these last couple right before the deadline?
Look, it's so funny because as Padres fans, we've dare I say gotten pretty spoiled, I think, with the trade deadline, with free agency because of AJ Preller and company. Everybody knows that people who don't follow baseball know that the Padres have morphed into this unbelievable just gambling, the characters you see in movies with the type of risky moves and the type of blockbuster deals that they make. So, this deadline by comparison looks relatively tame. But I actually think that might be one of my favorite deadlines and just overall string of moves that they've had in a while where they didn't really give up too much. Yes, Ryan Weathers ends up getting sent away. He's probably the biggest name that they gave up, but he might just be one of those guys that it's just not going to get done here. But he's still young, and if I'm a Marlins fan, I'd be interested because, still has decent command, still has a pretty good, decent changeup. But what I think the Padres did is just shore up their team overall, add some depth, and that's something that this team has been sorely lacking. I think that depth is an issue, but I also think the players haven't played very well, which I think is a big part of it. But they got 2 DHs essentially with Garrett Cooper and Ji-Man Choi. Both do very, very good in a lefty-righty sort of sense. Like they could be platoon guys. Scott Barlow, while he's having a down year, is an effective reliever and has been very good before. So I think that they basically just made a lot of moves that aren't going to have a huge downside. So even if they don't make the playoffs this year, it's not like they blew up their farm again and have a potential downside of getting really stuck in a bad position as maybe some other teams out there.
Right. Not a huge blockbuster, high risk, high reward sort of thing. It's more, hoping that your players who have underperformed can perform better and then hitting some key spots. What does that say about their belief in the team, not only maybe to make the playoffs this year, but just going forward?
I think it says, look, they still believe in the talent. There's still a lot of players. I just mentioned the amount of trades they made, right? Like they have a lot of superstars. They've got a lot of blockbuster players, but they haven't performed up to their talent level. And I think that it was really smart for Padres management and AJ Preller to decide, all right, we're not going to like completely sell. We're not going to go for crazy things this year. Instead, all right, show us if the run differential that they have, that everybody brings up whenever we're talking about the Padres, their low team ERA. It's like, okay, we'll add stuff, but we're not going to go crazy. And I think that it shows that they have tepid expectations for the team. I think it shows that they are trying to do, dare I say, what the Atlanta Braves did a while ago. Just because you don't get the big name of the deadline doesn't mean you're not trying. It might be that you feel pretty good about what you have and you're just shoring up the ends. You're just trying to add depth. And I think that, what happened with the Braves a few years ago, they took a chance on all these guys that nobody was really talking about who I guess just had nowhere to go but up. And I think that's the case here with all the guys that the Padres acquire, where there's no downside. If they get worse somehow, it actually would be impressive in the case of some of these guys. So I think the Padres did a really bang up job. It's not as exciting. It doesn't mean they're going to make the playoffs now, but they already had questions about that. So at least you made it a little bit easier, dare I say. So if they play like an average baseball team and bring in some runners when they get on base, they can make a run.
What do you need to see in the back half of the season? Obviously, playoffs maybe, but just in terms of improvement, is it just playing to your capability, or what are you hoping to see?
I think what I'm hoping to see is just the bullpen do a better job at holding down games. They've been good whenever you're up by 4, or I'm sorry, whenever they're down by 4, they'll keep it to down by 4. You know what I mean? You can trust the Padres bullpen for that. And the other thing would just be runners in scoring position. They've been really bad all year. It's been talked about a lot. It's my pinned tweet on the Locked On Padres Twitter account that they leave people on base. They just have to do that. You just have to be average. Hopefully Ji-Man Choi or Garrett Cooper, depending on the pitching matchup, can give you something out of DH because they basically got nothing. And never underestimate going from nothing to at least a little bit. I think that makes a big difference in baseball. So I think that they're going to approach the second half and be like, look, we still have Josh Hader. We still have Blake Snell. We still have all the good players. Just be decent. Go on a decent winning streak. They haven't won more than 4 games this year, which is insane. Just go on a decent streak and try not to lose literally every single game. They're 0-10 in extra innings. So everything from the outside says this team has something. They're definitely better than their record. But if you watch them, it feels like they have a lot of loser energy. So hopefully this is just a sign from the front office to the players that you just be decent. We believe in you guys. So let's go do it.
All right, remains to be seen, but the roster is set. Javier, thank you for joining us. And of course, Locked On Padres, you will have all of the details on all of these new faces that have come to San Diego.
Absolutely.